Vernon is two cities at once. It's a city of 96 residents, but it's a city of 50,000 jobs. The people in those jobs live throughout the county of Los Angeles. The decisions made there have an absolute direct impact on the neighboring cities, but the business activity there has a positive impact for employment throughout the county. And that's why the solution that we prescribe in this legislation is disincorporation and making the decision of governance in the future be activities of the County Board of Supervisors. The chairman has residents of his district that work in the city of Vernon. I obviously have a lot of residents of my district that work in the city of Vernon. Each of them are represented by one of the 5 members of the Board of Supervisors, who will then have the duty to balance out all these issues that we talk about, but to do so in a transparent way. I was saddened to see that on page 19 of the same booklet that Vernon folks were passing out today, it shows the city leaders. It shows the 50-year mayor that I spoke of before, no longer mayor because of his indictment. It lists as the head of the Light and Power Company, Donald O'Callaghan. It shows the police chief, a different police chief. Opponents of this legislation say that Vernon has been the place of a few bad apples. There have been a lot of bad apples, and many have been replaced by other bad apples. When you ask us to bring allegations of criminal activity to the chief of police or the chief of fire, I just ask, were they involved in the indictment of Donald O'Callaghan in 2010? No. Were they involved in the indictment of Bruce Malkenhorst in 2007? No. Were they involved in the indictments of Leonis Malberg, D'Amica Malberg, and John Malberg in 2007? No. Were they the ones that called to question the agreements between the city of Vernon and the Tara Energy Plant, or the payments between them, or the unreasonably excessive double compensation of people like Eric Fresh and others? No. The solutions proposed by the opponents of this legislation are further insular decision-making, not bringing things out in the light of day. The responsibility is ours to act now. We have the authority and we have the moral obligation to clean this up. I ask for your aye vote.
Vice Chair recommends an aye vote as well.
Thank you. If we would, we do have a motion and a second. Clerk, please call the roll.
The motion is do pass. Smythe.
Aye.
Smythe, aye. Alejo.
Aye.
Alejo, aye. Bradford. Campos. Campos, aye. Davis.
Aye.
Davis, aye. Gordon.
Aye.
Gordon, aye. Weso.
Aye.
Weso, aye. Knight. Norby.
Aye.
Norby, aye.
That measure is out. Mr. Dickinson, we'll take a minute to let everybody clear as you work your way up.
Was that 2.5 hours? Thank you for not throwing us under the bus or some laughter along in public. Yes, please go get him your bus to go back to LA right now. Yeah, go for it. It's gonna be a few minutes. Yeah, I'll switch over.
Hold on, I want to move Dickens over. No, neither is his.
Then you gotta get up. We don't want to get deep for our hosts to sit here 20 hours.
He doesn't seem to have a lot of testimony. Can we move his bill? Dickinson.
Yeah, let's just let him.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah.
He's got to start the presentation.
Somebody. There's one right there.
It's hard keeping poker face for that long.
All right, Mr. Dickinson, if you want to matriculate your way up, and before we do that, if we could have a motion on the consent calendar. Thank you. We have a motion and second on consent calendar, which is item number 10, SB 66. Please call the roll.
Smythe.
Aye.
Smythe, aye. Alejo. Bradford. Campos. Campos, aye. Davis. Gordon. Hueso. Hueso, aye. Knight. Norby. Norby, aye.
Consent calendar's on call. All right, our next item is AB 147 by Mr. Dickinson. Thank you for your patience.
I'll move the item, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Okay, we do have a motion and a second. Again, in the interest of time on your testimony.
No need. I just wanted to note that there are a number of organizations in support of the bill, and I don't know of any opposition. So I appreciate the motion, and I will know when to keep quiet.
Is there any other witnesses in support?
Kiana Buss with the California State Association of County Sponsors of the Measure, and we respectfully request your aye vote. Thank you.
Very good. Any other witnesses in support?
Graham Brownstein with Transform, strongly supportive.
Thank you. Anyone else in support? Come on up. Line up real quick. Let's come on up. Everybody in support.
I couldn't get through.
That's all right.
Thank you. Leslie McFadden, on behalf of the Sacramento County Board of Supervisors, in strong support.
147.
Very good. For those of you coming in, we're hearing AB 147. We're doing witnesses in support. So if you are in support, please work your way up.
Mr. Chairman, one quick note. There was an inadvertent deletion of a clause in the bill with the amendments that were done regarding the definition of the term construction, and I will add that on the floor. So I think that addresses one concern that had been raised.
Very good. Any witnesses in opposition? Any witness opposition? Tweeners?
Nick Camerata on behalf of the California Building Industry Association, not in opposition with this last referenced amendment. I think any concerns we have with the bill will be alleviated, and we are grateful to the author for working with us and listening to our concerns. Thank you.
Very good. Seeing no other comments or questions, you may close.
I would respectfully request your aye vote. Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you. We
Chairman.
do have a motion and a second on the bill. Please call the roll.
Motion is due pass. Smythe.
Oh.
Smythe, no. Alejo. Bradford. Campos. Davis. Gordon. Hueso.
A.
Hueso, aye. Knight. Norby.
No.
Norby, no.
All right, your bill is on call.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Cook. Item number 7, AB 1008.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. California's experiment with red light cameras has so far led to soaring costs for motorists with no clear reduction in traffic accidents. AB 1008 will place a moratorium on the installation of new red light cameras It will also provide that any camera that has not been shown to reduce accidents be removed by 2015. This will remove the cameras from intersections where they are ineffective, thus hopefully reducing the cost to cities and motorists. We'll make sure that they are only placed where they will actually reduce accidents. Studies demonstrate that red light cameras do not increase public safety and, in fact, might even be dangerous, at least some of my studies. You'll probably also hear about studies from the opposition that is to the contrary. And in full disclosure, I do have copies of mine, and we'll share that with the committee. The City of Los Angeles, which operates one of the largest red light camera systems in California, conducted a study in 2010 to determine whether the system had increased public safety. Exhaustive 77-page study found the city, quote, cannot conclusively demonstrate that it reduced traffic collisions, thereby reducing public safety. In the past year alone, there have been 2 separate grand jury investigations into the safety effects of red light cameras. Grand juries in San Mateo and Napa County both found no reliable evidence to suggest that red light cameras improve traffic safety. In fact, San Mateo grand jury found the government had used the number of citations and revenue generated rather than pertaining to the number of traffic accidents as their metric of success. Further, another study, perhaps the largest, this goes back 2004, conducted by the Urban Transit Institute and sponsored by the U.S. Department of Transportation, found no reduction in traffic accidents. In fact, this study found an astonishing 40% increase in accident rates when the cameras were installed. 2010, San Bernardino County Appellate Court ruled that photo ticket evidence was inadmissible hearsay. Seems likely that as more motorists challenge their tickets because of the expense and high costs, rather than pay them, the stage will be set for legal chaos as these issues begin to work their way through appellate courts. One thing that we want to do with this bill is provide consistency between jurisdictions to guarantee safety for California motorists, and everybody is on the same sheet of music in terms of the laws that we have to obey. The moratorium on new cameras will give the courts time to reach a statewide decision. Another major problem has been the soaring fees attached to these tickets. Cities, counties, and the states have all tacked on enough surcharges that now motorists are regularly charged, in some cases, over $450 for a red light ticket. This can consume an entire paycheck for many Californians, particularly if you're a student, with the increase in fees. And this, combined with a difficult economy, can leave them in a difficult position. There are many examples of this that I can go on and on. Both Union City and San Bernardino have been caught using illegally short yellow lights at camera-equipped intersections. A 2003 Texas study also found that increasing the length of yellow lights significantly reduced red light running. But in contrast, some California cities have found that camera revenues frequently drop to the point of unprofitability when yellow lights are extended. And this is a variable that is not constant throughout the states. As long as cities view red light cameras as revenue generators, the temptation will exist to game the system in ways that maximizes revenue instead of safety. Last year, the former governor proposed a massive expansion of speed cameras as a way to raise revenue for the budget. That's when this first aroused my interest in committee. Extensive questions were raised. It's one of those things that everyone was concerned about it. Unfortunately, it did not pass or become part of the budget solution. I come from local government, been a mayor on a council, always preferred local control, and I'm hesitant to step on the toes of locals. But with red light cameras, however, the evidence is overwhelming that they protect neither the public safety nor financial security. Now, whether we're going to have a solution on this, I don't know. I suspect there's going to be a lot of questions or concerns from the committee. We are willing to entertain certain amendments if there is support on some of the issues that have been raised in this bill to go forward.
Very good. Witnesses in support of the measure?
I had about 600 witnesses. They were waiting out there. Well, they passed out from exhaustion, so I don't have any right now.
Very good. Witnesses in opposition?
Good afternoon. Mr. Chair and members, Dorothy Holzen with the League of California Cities, and we are here today in opposition because this bill does take away local decision-making powers for a public safety tool that has been used effectively and implemented in many cities, saving lives and reducing fatal collisions. Unfortunately, AB 1008 sets up a baby with a bathwater situation. We do appreciate the author's concern for those cities in his district and other cities that have difficulty implementing the system and have since withdrawn it from active status. We'll be one of the first to say that red light cameras are not appropriate at every intersection. But current law does not require all cities to implement red light cameras nor keep them online. It's a local decision. They do so in collaboration with their law enforcement agencies based on local traffic conditions to that jurisdiction. According to a study released just 2 months ago by the Insurance Institute of Highway Safety, they found that here in Sacramento, fatal collisions were reduced by 53% in intersections that had red light cameras compared to those that didn't, which only had an 11% reduction. Same thing in the city of Santa Ana. It had a 44% reduction in fatal collisions compared to 22 all-signaled intersections. So red light camera systems offer a means to maximize law enforcement resources and a way to save lives. And for these reasons, we are in opposition and we urge your no vote.
Thank you.
John Lovell with the California Police Chiefs Association. There were about 800 other cops out waiting, but we had to just couldn't stand up for too long with the other hearing. Seriously, though, we strongly support red light cameras for the public safety functions that they have. Dorothy Holson just cited the study of the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. I think it's significant that that is a true independent study. These are not people connected with the red light camera industry or people connected with efforts to get rid of red light cameras. These are the insurance companies measuring what are the results of red light cameras, and the results are significant. 35% decrease in fatal crashes in 62 large U.S. cities that have installed red light cameras. Interestingly, the installation of red light cameras also has a salutary effect at those intersections that don't have red light cameras themselves, because it changes intersection behavior, if you will, with drivers. We hold no brief for the games of shortening the yellow lights or having, some guy from the Department of Finance determine where the red light cameras will be sited. In fact, we worked very closely with Senator Simitian last year with his SB 1362 that was unhappily vetoed by the then governor, and we are working again with Senator Simitian on his SB 29, very similar bill. But let us not lose sight of the real lives that are saved by red light cameras. This is an important technology. It's also an important officer safety technology. Frankly, there are some intersections. You go to the intersection here at Howe and Fair Oaks. Sending an officer through that intersection to attempt to apprehend someone who's run a red light can be a very dangerous enterprise. This is a good technology. It is not a panacea. It needs care and oversight, but it manifestly should not be done away with. Too many lives have been saved. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness, just name, position.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Tony Rice, representing the city of Covina. They are opposed to the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in opposition? Seeing none, are there any questions from the committee? Seeing none?
I'll move it.
Okay, I will give a second for the bill. Mr. Cook, you may close.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. You know, there are certain bills that, or certain issues that you get a feedback from the populace. I challenge the committee if they can deny that they haven't heard about this issue, or that there aren't some of their citizens that question the Big Brother aspects of this, and whether it's fair. Now, I got to be honest with you, I haven't read 1984 for quite a few years, but where we're going to have cameras at every intersection to control certain behavior controlled by an outside agency, where in some instances, as evidenced not so much by the studies, by the fact that a number of municipalities which initiated this changed their mind and did away with it. And you have to ask the question, why? That's why I said I was, interested if people were wanted to support this on suggestions or recommendations. The one thing that I would at least suggest is a limit to this, or else we're going to have college students that are going to get whacked with overall fines that are getting close to $500 and maybe going further. And for that type of offense, you have to ask whether they can afford it or whether it does work. So with that, I ask for your aye vote.
Very good. We do have a motion, a second. Please call the roll.
The motion is due pass and re-refer to the Committee on Appropriations. Smythe, Alejo, Bradford, Campos, Davis, Gordon, Hueso, no, Knight, Norby. Norby, aye.
Your bill is on call. As I'm saying to all the authors, that if your bill does not receive the required votes, would you like to ask for reconsideration now so you don't have to stick around?
Yes.
Very good.
Thank you.
That'll be reflected in the record. Thank you. Mr. Solario.
Thank you, Chair Hueso and members, at least your chair for the next few minutes. This bill would take some moderate steps to ensure that mutual water companies provide clean drinking water to its customers and stakeholders, just as small water public agencies do. Private mutual water companies that operate public water systems often fall through the cracks of public oversight and regulation with which local governments must comply to provide a public service. Specifically, this bill takes three actions. First, it authorizes the Department of Public Health to issue letters of no prejudice to agencies that have applied for state funding, to allow them to advance their own funding to fix the problem before final agreements are signed without prejudicing the final decision. Second, it allows but does not require LAFCOs to consider compliance with the Safe Drinking Water Act when mutual water companies request to consolidate into adjacent public agencies. Third, the bill requires mutual water companies to comply with the same kind of requirements as public agencies, such as construction standards, accounting standards, and director training. Members, I ask for your aye vote to help ensure that California, to ensure that Californians that reside in mutual water districts can also rely on healthy and safe drinking water. I ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. Do you have any testimony from supporters?
I do.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. Chairman Smythe. My name is Pete Campa, General Manager, Tuolumne Utilities District. We serve a population of 44,000 between the Tuolumne River and the Stanislaus River. We cover about 1,300 square miles, and we have a visual aid here. And one of the things that I found very interesting about this bill, and our district does support this bill, as well as another association that I belong to, which is the Mountain Counties Water Resources, which covers counties from Sierra down to Mariposa, is the fact that we have seen a number of mutual water companies pop up over the years, especially during the growth period of California in the foothills, where these rural water systems have grown in the various pockets and valleys and hilltops. And as you can see by the map, we have mutual water companies in each of those purple locations. There's 13 of them in our community alone, serving 2,500 customers. And what we've found is that over a period of time, these systems have had difficulty in complying with drinking water standards. They've typically the goal of these mutual companies in our area anyway, throughout the mountains, has been to try to keep the rates as low as possible for as long as possible, which we all, believe me, as water managers, that's exactly what we try to do. The unfortunate thing is that these are typically homeowner boards. They don't have any experience in water system management usually, and we are dealing with a health and safety type of service. All of our operators for our district are state certified, required to have continuing education and quite a bit of experience in the field. The concern is that as these systems continue to operate and grow, that we'll continue to see a trend in noncompliance with water quality regulations. So the purpose of this bill is to help raise these mutual water companies up to a standard that's comparable with a public agency, a public water system, and to provide them the tools necessary to be able to do that at a very low cost. It's not a regulatory type bill. It's not a high cost bill. It's purely just a bill that looks at bringing these agencies up to a standard.
Chair, I move the bill.
Thank you. I'll provide a second.
Casey Elliott on behalf of the City of Santa Ana. The City of Santa Ana recently became aware of a small mutual water company that serves approximately 90 residents within the city. As with mutual water companies across the state, this company has allowed their facilities and their infrastructure to degrade over the years, posing unsafe drinking water standards for the residents. The City of Santa Ana is working with the Department of Public Health to secure funding in order to bring the residents onto the city system. Under Mr. Solario's bill, the Department of Public Health would be able to issue letters of no prejudice, which would allow the city to use their local funds without jeopardizing the loss of state funds, and thus able to bring the drinking water standards up to an acceptable level more quickly. So for these reasons, we're supportive of the bill.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Bill Scheid, Executive Director of the California Association of Local Agency Formation Commissions. We're here in support of the bill. The Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg Local Government Reorganization Act requires every LAFCO to prepare municipal service reviews to inform decisions on spheres and other service delivery issues. One of the most important municipal service reviews that LAFCOs do are their water MSRs, and LAFCOs have to find that water is available before they can do any kind of annexation, extension of services. In preparing municipal service reviews, LAFCOs have found it often difficult to get information from mutual water companies, sometimes not even knowing where all the mutual water companies are. We had a similar issue with investor-owned utilities, and we worked with the Public Utilities Commission to create a similar executive order as Mr. Solario's bill before you today, and have been very successful in gaining information now for municipal service reviews from the investor-owned utilities. This bill would add mutual water companies to that list and require them to provide the information to LAFCOs, including maps of their agencies, which will result, we believe, in stronger municipal service reviews and a better informed commission and a better informed community on water services in their area. And we ask for your support. Thank you.
Very, very good. Any other witnesses in support?
Yeah, Vern Gehring, representing Food and Water Watch, a national organization working to ensure every home in California has drinkable water, and also the Planning and Conservation League. We think providing drinking water to households may be the most important community service possible. Public and private entities that do so should expect a high degree of scrutiny. We think this bill proposes reasonable, creative, and cost-effective measures to ensure transparency, service quality, and accountability, and we urge your adoption of it. Thank you.
Very good. Any other witnesses in support? Seeing none witnesses in opposition.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members. Meg Katzenbrown, representing the Central Basin Water Association. First of all, we want to thank the author for taking on this issue. This is not a new issue. There have been underperforming small water systems, whether they are mutual water systems, public agencies, or regulated water utilities for many, many years in California, and we have all in the public policy arena struggled with how to deal with some of the challenges that they present. Unfortunately, we cannot support AB 54 in its current form. There are some provisions in the bill that we think are very worthwhile. There are other provisions in the bill that give us a little bit of heartburn, and I'm here to chat with you briefly about those. I will say that I have worked very closely with the author's office over the last couple of months, exploring these issues and a variety of ideas how to deal with them, and I don't think that our conversations are over yet. So I want to thank the author and his staff for giving me time with them over the last several weeks and in the weeks to come. Some of the provisions that the Central Basin Water Association find problematic are, in fact, some of those provisions that are very specific to public water agencies. For example, the prevailing wage provision that was added in the most recent amendments is troublesome, and although I appreciate the perspective of some of the public agency witnesses that preceded me, I would note that in the world of regulated utilities, public utilities manage just fine to have safe operating systems without being subject to all of the laws that public agencies, water suppliers, find themselves having to deal with. So the prevailing wage provision is problematic. The GASB provision is problematic. We would suggest that to the degree that what the author is hoping to get at is some financial assurance from the water supplier that they will be able to upgrade their system and keep it operational. We think that's a worthy goal, and perhaps that's something that should be spelled out rather than imposing a government accounting system on them. Additionally, well, anyway, so those are a couple of the things that we're finding somewhat problematic. As I said, we have not concluded our conversations with the author's office, and we do hope that we will be able to continue to narrow this bill and shape it so that it's something that Central Basin Water Association can support.
Very good. Thank you. Any other witnesses in opposition? All right, seeing none, questions from the committee. Mr. Norby.
I respect the author's intent and know it's addressing a serious problem in your district. I'd like to support it. The prevailing wage, though, simply expanding that to apply to all other mutual companies throughout the state, I don't think is directly related to the original purpose of the bill, and that would be the one reason why I wouldn't be able to support it if that in fact is the case. Thank you.
We do have a motion and a second. Mr. Alejo.
Just want to say, Vice Chair recommends an aye vote on this.
Very good. Mr. Lowry, if you want to address Mr. Norby's question in your close, that would be great.
Thank you for your consideration of this measure. Just in summary, some of these mutual water companies operate as rogue companies with largely boards that have been in place a long time. To highlight the situation in Santa Ana, it's a neighborhood about 90 homes. The pump is in somebody's backyard. The person could no longer operate it. Then the person moved. Then people had to go into that person's backyard. In terms of the infrastructure requirements, it's degraded. There's a high level of nitrates. Kids weren't going to school. because they couldn't brush their teeth or take showers because of the high level of nitrates. The issue with prevailing wage, that's something that is part of all public works projects, and we want to make sure that when we're putting in new water infrastructure projects that it's going to be built with quality. And we see through Public Works that's the reason why we have a prevailing wage, to make sure that we aren't cutting corners. But I do understand that that's been an issue brought to us. We're trying to see how to address it, because we at the same time want to balance that need for high quality with ensuring that these mutuals have the finances in place to build the infrastructure. So we don't want to not have new infrastructure because of a financing issue. So we'll address that as we move forward. I ask for your aye vote.
Very good. Please call the roll.
The motion is due pass and re-refer to the Committee on Environmental Safety and Toxic Materials. Smythe. Alejo. Alejo, aye. Bradford. Campos. Davis. Gordon. Gordon, aye. Hueso. Hueso, aye. Knight. Norby.
Okay, that measure is on call. Real quick.
Thank you.
If we could lift the call on the consent calendar, which is item number 10.
Current vote is 4-0. Alejo. Alejo, aye. Bradford. Davis. Gordon. Gordon, aye. Knight.
All right, consent calendar is out. Next item we'll do very quickly is item number 5 by Mr. Hueso, AB 486, which does have support on both sides.
Mr. Chair and colleagues, AB 486 is a graffiti abatement bill that would create a system of uniformity along the County of San Diego. I helped develop this. I worked on developing this bill together with the County of San Diego, and with the support of SANDAG as well. This bill would take money that's gained from the restitution on graffiti to create a tracking system that will help get better performance on identifying graffiti. Graffiti taggers don't respect political boundaries, so they tend to go from one jurisdiction to another, and it becomes very difficult for certain jurisdictions to track graffiti that way. But if they're working together with the county, we'll get better results. I respectfully request your support for this. We have the county's support. We have the Association of Governments, City of Coronado Police Department, Chula Vista Police Department, the Mayor of Chula Vista, Mayor of National City, Council members Steve Castañeda and Pam Ben-Susan from Chula Vista, as well as the Sheriff of San Diego County.
Great. We have a motion and a second. Witnesses, briefly, keep that in mind.
Yes, Jim Gross on behalf of the County of San Diego. As Mr. Hueso said, the county has been working with cities in the area of the county to develop this system. Graffiti is a $100 million a year problem, and these systems have been shown to be able to track those who are committing these crimes and be able to then apprehend them and prosecute them. We want to get this utilized throughout the county, and ultimately we think it's a state model. We ask for your support.
Very good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Brooks Ellison on behalf of SANDAG. We support the goals and intent of the bill and look forward to working with the author.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition? Thank you. We do have a motion and a second. If you'd like to close.
Respectfully request an aye vote.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
The motion is due pass and re-refer to the Committee on Appropriations. Smythe.
Aye.
Smythe, aye. Alejo. Aye. Alejo, aye. Bradford. Campos. Davis. Gordon. Gordon, aye. Hueso.
Aye.
Hueso, aye. Knight. Norby.
Aye.
Norby, aye. Bill's out.
All right, that measure is out. Thank you, Mr. Norby. Thank you. We are now going to take up item number 8, AB 1045 by Mr. Norby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, imagine if prior to your next election, either re-election or for another office, somebody approached you and said, look, I will run your campaign. I'll do your polling, I'll do your public outreach, I'll even contribute lots of money to it. And in exchange, after you win, you've got to hire my staff as your staff, and you've got to sign this in advance. Now, such an arrangement would be illegal. It would certainly be unethical, and it would be outrageous. But that's exactly what's happening in many school bond elections. This kind of built-in conflict of interest, whereby a bonding firm, prior to the bonds even being issued, agrees to run the campaign, contribute to it, do the polling in advance, the public outreach, with the understanding, the written understanding, that once the bond has passed, they will then get that bond business. There'll be no public, there'll be no RFPs, there'll be no public bidding. They will get the business once they help you win the election. That's what my bill aims to address. A bond election is an important community event. Certainly anyone's free to contribute to it based on the hope that they might get business later. That happens, but not with the legal obligation that they will get that business. That turns a bond election, which should be a free exchange of ideas among community members, into something that is being driven not by community need, but by Wall Street greed. We don't want that kind of manipulation or conflict of interest in our school bond elections. Now, school bond elections are already being passed at a 70% rate. I don't believe this will have any measurable effect on that rate, but it will simply say to the public that the campaign that is being run for this bond issue is not being motivated by an understanding that the company doing the campaign will then profit later from it. And I ask for your aye vote. This bill is being supported by the California Association of Treasurers and Tax Collectors, Kern County Superintendent of Schools, and the Orange County Board of Supervisors. And I do have some speakers here on behalf of the bill.
Very good. As you remember, we have 2 lead witnesses. The rest will be the Me Too's. So thank you. First witness.
Hello. Karen Adams, Merced County Treasurer Tax Collector, and I have the privilege this year of being the president of the California Association of County Treasurers and Tax Collectors. And on behalf of the association, thank you for setting this hearing, and of course, thank you for Assemblyman Norby. I'm most sensitive to the needs of the schools. I realize that school officials ultimately need to educate children, and to do so, they need good facilities to instruct these children. And I'm also sensitive as a tax collector, the burden that I place on the tax bill. And ultimately, what we want to have is a good debt structure that satisfies all of the participants that will be affected by the debt issuance. Code explicitly mandates that treasurers are the guardians of the taxpayers' money, and therefore treasurers need legislative support to assure bond pricing efficiencies have been incorporated into the debt issuance process. It is critical that legislation prohibit financial advisors, underwriters, and bond counsels from making campaign contributions on bonds they will ultimately issue on behalf of the school districts. I have examples with me of FPPC Form 460s where the local school district formed their committees, and as an example, $5,700 was raised. $55 of it was from the underwriter and the FA that actually issued the debt into the marketplace on behalf of the school official, and including planners, architects, and of course contractors. So these key players are looking at the end game, and the end game is to issue the bonds, and of course fees are connected with these bond issuance. And that is the underlining preface that I want to make clear today, that we have a responsibility to have transparency and also to have integrity in the system. As a treasurer, I have the responsibility of smart, prudent investing for my pool participants, which includes the schools. And as a CPA, I take an oath for integrity, objectivity, and impartiality so that independence does not prevent me from delivering an end product in my professional delivery. And so a lack of independence, or even the perception of a lack of independence, is a conflict of interest, and it impairs that ability to stay objective and impartial. And advisors and underwriters should be required to abide by the same standard when rendering their services. And they aren't, because this is a backdoor approach for them to recover their campaign costs while at the end result is to issue the bonds where fees are attached. You can locate on financial advisors' websites explicit statements that read, full-service, in-house election team comprised of campaign specialist pollsters and provide financial advisor and underwriting services. There is no disconnect in this process. As a result, the ability of the financial professional to stay impartial and evaluate the proposed debt issuance will definitely not benefit the jurisdiction. Bond counsel and underwriters are allowed to make campaign contributions that promote approval of bond issuance on the bonds. They also project the future assessed valuation growth trends to determine if the issuance is feasible. Again, it's all based on the end result. I do have an example of a small jurisdiction, unincorporated area in Merced County, with Merced County having 20 to 21% unemployment today, and we struggle with number 1 to number 3 in foreclosures in the nation. And yet this unincorporated area, which is my highest tax default area, issued a bond 2 years ago, $800,000, and will repay $11 million. $10 million of it in interest. Now, to me, definitely this community did need a gym and a community center, and definitely this school does need the facility to provide the services that they want to render in educating students. However, the debt issuance did not satisfy the jurisdiction and the taxpayers that voted on this issue at large. And that's my concern, is that there is truly a disconnect in evaluating smart debt issuance for school districts. And when you taint that process with the lack of independence, we are not providing the transparency and the intent of the true law.
Very good. Next witness.
Good afternoon. I'm Lori Ranieri. I'm the president of Government Financial Strategies. I'm also a certified independent public finance advisor, and I'm a certified fraud examiner. My professional practice includes expert witness work, fraud examination, and third-party reviews, in addition to more traditional financial advisory work. In doing this work, I've seen millions of additional public dollars spent as a result of the practice of bond campaign polling and political consulting being bundled in with other professional services such as bond underwriting and financial advisory work. I've reviewed AB 1045, and I'd like to share 4 reasons in favor of the bill. I also want to comment that the committee analysis, which was shared with me earlier, suggests that this bill is not necessary, and I believe that it is. The number one reason I have is to clarify that this common practice is an illegal use of public funds for campaigning. The Legislative Council has opined twice, in 2003 and 2010, that the provision of campaign services as part of an engagement to provide other professional services is unlawful. Yet, because these opinions rely heavily on case law, it is not apparent to public officials what the law is. My second reason is to prevent corruption of a negotiation in which great sums of public funds are at stake. The public official's ability to negotiate fees and costs is compromised because the party on the opposite side of the table at the time of the negotiation was formerly the district's uncompensated and often secret advocate. There is a lingering obligation to reimburse the opposing party for this advocacy. When the negotiation is about bond pricing, a seemingly small differential at the magnitude of basis points can mean millions of dollars. Because public officials are very focused on the core mission of the public agency, they often perform little or no due diligence on bond costs, have little or no information about market pricing other than what the party with whom they are negotiating provides, and are motivated by the history of support for the campaign. My third reason is to eliminate an unfair and improper public purchasing practice of professional services. Hiring of financial professionals is exempted from customary public bidding requirements, and public officials often select professional service firms on the basis of qualifications. However, the selection sometimes seems to utilize an unfair and improper purchasing criterion, namely the provision of campaign contributions and/or services. The opportunity to provide these services is not advertised or requested of all potential responders, because to do so brings us right back to the first and overriding problem, the illegal use of public funds for campaign services. I can tell you that in my own personal practice, I've been interviewed for school district engagements, and I've been asked, the RFQ was for financial advisory services. I've been asked, what other services will you be providing other than financial advisory services? I always find that a strange question, but I think it's implied what somebody wants to hear. To reduce the conflict of interest on the part of professionals in the provision of advice would be a reason for this bill. I want to second what Treasurer Adams said about financial professionals who provide uncompensated bond campaign services have made a substantial investment, and they have substantial interest in not only the passage of the measure, but the issuance of bonds in large amounts and quickly. They want this so that they can be compensated. They get paid at the time of bond issuance. So these same finance professionals are typically advising on the financing plans, including important assumptions regarding tax-based growth and term of bonds, and providing statutorily required conclusions such as projected tax rates. This particular problem was illuminated with the cash-out general obligation bond refundings, which the Attorney General concluded were in violation of the California Constitution. So that's another instance in which a widespread practice was found to be clearly against the law, but hard for public officials to know. So I'll wrap up. I can certainly provide examples at your discretion, but they may not be particularly relevant because when we think about three words we don't like to hear when we think about government, they're waste, fraud, and abuse. And I think this bill is less about waste and more about fraud and abuse.
Thank you. All other witnesses, just name and position, please. Affiliation.
Karen Lang on behalf of the California Association of County Treasurers and Tax Collectors. In strong support, we've been trying to run this bill for 5 years. It's incredibly important. We ask for your aye vote to say thank you.
Thank you.
Holly Fermini, Platinum Advisors, on behalf of the Orange County Board of Supervisors. I can testify that this is common practice in Orange County. It's not a once-in-a-while occurrence. We urge your support.
Michael Holsizer here on behalf of the Kern County Superintendent of Schools. We share the concerns of the tax collectors and treasurers around the state. This is a real issue. We ask you to support the bill.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in support? Opposition? If we can make room for them. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members, Dave Walrath, representing the Small School Districts Association. We believe current law is very clear about conflict of interest. We believe that current law has been applied. The schools who are in our association we represent are very careful to ensure that public funds are not used in a campaign and would violate the law. Small school districts do not have bond campaigns frequently. And in most of rural California, there are not a lot of campaign firms. They're usually found in urban parts of the state. A small district might do a bond campaign once every 15 years. And why is it important? Because except for a very limited number of school districts and county offices, if you don't pass a bond, you cannot participate in the state school facility program. You cannot receive state matching funds under the State School Facilities Program. State law is so crafted that school districts, for all practical purposes, except for a very few, must pass local bonds in order to address their school modernization and their school facility needs. If they need to upgrade their gymnasium, if they need to work on their water program, their well, and other activities. We believe current law is sufficient. We believe this bill is not necessary. We oppose the bill.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Bron Shea Jones on behalf of George K. Baum and Company. We also oppose the bill. We would second the comments of Mr. Walrath and have a general concern about the state of California dictating to local districts how and when they would conduct their bond campaigns. We think the current law is clear. We think the legislature, when this measure has been before it in the past, has been clear on the issue. And the measure has not gotten out of the legislature, and it's probably the fifth or sixth time this has been run, so we would urge a no vote on the bill. Thank you.
Very good. Any other witnesses in opposition? Seeing none.
Hi, Abel Guillen, opposed to the legislation, echoing the comments stated from the opposition. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Seeing no others, there are questions from the committee. Seeing none, I will move the bill.
I'll second it, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Then you may close. Do you have questions?
Committee members, for a candidate, if there's a provable nexus between a political contribution and an assured government outcome, that's a serious crime. In a bond election, the law is much vaguer, and this clarifies that law. You've heard opponents saying how important it is to pass these bond measures, and it may be very important. But especially in small districts, that's where the grassroots comes in. That's where the PTAs come in. That's where the phone calls come in to the voters. These elections should not be swayed by giant Wall Street bond brokerage firms who have assured that once they get this bond passed, they will get the bond business. And of course, they have to factor the cost of running the campaign into the cost of the bond issuance. That is a package deal, which in any other election would not be allowed, and we have to clarify that it can't continue here. And I ask for your aye vote.
Vice Chair recommends a no vote.
Very good. We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
The motion is Dupass. Smythe.
Aye.
Smythe, aye. Alejo. Alejo, no. Bradford. Campos. Campos, no. Davis. Gordon. Hueso. Knight. Norby.
Aye.
Norby, aye. It's on call.
All right, that measure is on call as well. All right, we have next item number 4, AB 438. Mr. Williams. Thank you for your patience.
Good afternoon, Chair, members. I'm pleased to present this bill for one, that it's not the most controversial bill up today in your committee.
Which is saying much.
Or at least not the one that has as many witnesses. So I'm pleased to present my bill, which would require a local government that wishes to privatize their library services to first seek approval from the public through the next regularly scheduled election. As I'm sure that you all agree, libraries are a vital part of the education system. They reinforce both intellectual freedom and an individual's right to access information. And I think most importantly, in many cases, for many people and in many communities, it is the only point of access for resources for learning and, by extension, self-sufficiency. In the midst of this, there is a growing effort to allow for-profit companies to operate a free library system. And past experiences with private library service providers have resulted in diminished library services in some cases and diminished access for especially those people that depend on it as the only point of access. In response to Santa Clarita's decisions to outsource to LSSI, the LA Public Library's Public Information Officer responded that access to the county collection would be severely limited, slow, incomplete, and difficult to navigate. And they also provided a list of items that would not be sent via an interlibrary loan, which that gives pause for concern because of access to the same kind of services that a normal public library would have. So I'm concerned that claims about running libraries more efficiently might be based on diminishing of services or diminishing of talent involved in the libraries. And without proper oversight, a company could game the system by doing such things as increasing the availability of cheap paperbacks and therefore looking like there is increased circulation. Finally, while local governments are required to hold a public hearing, this is the same kind of public notice that an appeal would have, a 3-day Brown Act notice. And many people have found that their libraries are privatized before ever learning that that was a subject of discussion. My bill simply requires a local government that wishes to privatize to first take that request to the people. I ask for your aye vote. I have 2 witnesses in support, both librarians.
Very good. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members. My name is Cindy Singer, and I'm a librarian for the County of Los Angeles and also a board member of SEIU 721. I'm here today to talk about the fact that privatization in the library is something that is on par with privatizing fire and safety. These things are very much part of the public sector, not private sector. This bill is in a direct response to cities like Bell and Santa Clarita that have not taken their constituency into consideration, and it would ensure that cities like Stockton, who did take a vote, become the precedent in this.
Very good. Next witness.
Hi, I'm Gina Quisenberry. I'm the Community Library Manager at the El Monte Library, part of the County of Los Angeles Public Library System. And public libraries provide a lot of quality programs and services that could potentially be at risk if a library system were to privatize. We have a variety of programs that we offer in a way to tailor our services to those communities that we serve, because we're not all the same. You know, we each have different communities we serve, whether they're highly Hispanic or Asian. It just depends. And so we really try to provide a need, or we try to provide those services to the people who have a need. And they come to us because they value the services that we provide. I mean, we'll make notice of changes in times when families come to the library. So we'll want to provide more things at that time as opposed to earlier in the day when no one's there. And we really get to know the patrons in our libraries because we see them every day. They constantly use us all the time, whether it's for internet access, which could be the only point of access for the internet in our library, or for just general literacy and continuing the literacy and reading comprehension from school during the summer when they go from one grade to the next. So we are a very vital service for these families in these communities. So I just want to let you know that our education really plays a factor in this. We all have masters of library science, so we are very highly educated professionals, and we definitely need to have your support in AB 438. Thank you.
Very good. The rest of the witnesses, just name, affiliation, position. Thank you.
Michelle Castro, the Service Employees International Union. Ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Libby Sanchez, Laborers Local 777 and 792, also in strong support.
Thank you.
Tony Triguero, California Teachers Association. On behalf of our 320,000 members, we're delighted to be in this committee today, and we ask for an aye vote on this important bill. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members, Caitlin Vega for the California Labor Federation, also here in support.
Thank you.
Janice Norman on behalf of the American Federation of State, County, Municipal Employees in support of the bill as well.
Very good. Any other witnesses in support? Opposition?
I think I'm the designated.
Yes, we got one more, I think, Assembly Member.
Good afternoon. I'm Kiara Ross with the League of California Cities in opposition to this bill. We view libraries as the centerpieces of our communities. They are where people gather, come to learn, use the internet, look for jobs, and much more. In this time of fiscal constraint, though, many cities are grappling with making tough fiscal choices while preserving critical public services like our libraries. One option for cities is to look at contract out the staffing services for the library. City council members routinely make administrative decisions on contracts, policies, and fiscal matters that are essential to the local government running effectively and smoothly. In fact, they're elected to do just that. AB 438 undermines this ability by putting the administrative fiscal decision by a city council to contract out services to a vote of the people at the next regularly scheduled election, which could easily at the local level be 18 months or 2 years away. Sometimes these fiscal decisions that are essential to government running smoothly must happen over a few months' time. This is likely because the city faces a budget deficit and must figure out how to balance their budget while protecting those vital services that are near and dear to our communities. Forcing the City Council to wait a year and a half until the next regularly scheduled election could easily exacerbate an already bad fiscal situation. Moreover, as the committee analysis points out, this bill sets a dangerous precedent for local government by allowing for the first time a mandatory vote on a city contract. Cities that make administrative decisions like contracts very regularly. To allow the law to force a vote on a contract handcuffs the ability of the city to run efficiently. This undermines the ability of the City Council to do their job. What's the point of having elected representatives if their decisions on basic administrative functions like a contract have to go before the voters? Cities are invested in keeping our communities vibrant and healthy. Our public libraries are a big part of that. But in tough fiscal times, our cities need the flexibility to make the tough fiscal decisions that our council members are elected to make. We urge your no vote on AB 438.
Very good. So, Member Dickerson, welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Local Government Committee. As the chairman mentioned, I was a former member of the State Assembly, also a member of the Shasta County Board of Supervisors, and currently the Vice Mayor of the City of Reading. And in that capacity, I serve as the President of the Library Board of Trustees, which is in fact the City Council. The City Council of Reading determined in 2007 that in order to operate our library as efficiently as possible, that we would seek a professional management organization to manage the day-to-day operations within the library. It was not a push to privatize. It was a push to keep our library open. When we made that decision, the county had control of the library, with the city being a partner. After a great deal of public comment, discussion, and organizations, it was determined that the city was in a better position financially to ensure that the county library system worked than the county was at that time. So it was not a situation of the city backing out of a county library system. It was a situation wherein the city actually took the responsibility of operating the newly constructed library. When I was on the Board of Supervisors, I helped make the unfortunate decision to close the library because we didn't have the funding to keep it open as long as it should have been. Now, I applaud the author for saying how important libraries are to the citizens of the state of California. He couldn't be more right. But I think he's a little bit wrong in saying that privatizing by itself is not something that should be done pursuant to state law without a vote of the people. It turns out that with the management coming from LSSI, the people of Shasta County enjoy a first-class library. The employees who formerly worked for the Shasta County Library System, for the most part, currently work for LSSI. They live in our community. They are members of the working crew within the city of Reading and the county of Shasta. We did not turn control of the library's policies and decision-making over to LSSI. The city council and the Board of Supervisors appointed an advisory committee that reviews the work that needs to be done at the library. They hold public hearings, getting input from the community on what policy should be implemented, what books should be purchased, and LSSI implements that. They do not have the ability, pursuant to our contract, to tell us what books we buy or don't buy. They don't have the ability to change the fees, and they don't have the ability to mandate the other issues within the operation of the library. And ultimately, the city council, acting as the board of trustees for the library system, has the final decision on how that is operated. So privatizing, if you want to call it privatizing, I call it a public-private partnership, is what we have with LSSI in Shasta County. It works extremely well. We would not have the library that we have today without that contract and that cooperation. So I urge you not to put the burden on local boards of supervisors or city council to take an issue such as this with all of its complications before the public for a vote, for the reasons that were already mentioned here today. It's just cumbersome. It creates problems. The chief problem is if the council wants to do that and it has to go to a vote of the people, the council cannot even campaign for it using public funds. So they're in a bind. If my information is right, most of you folks, if not all of you, are former local elected officials, and you understand. And because I know you understand, I'm urging your no vote today.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Dixon. The rest of the witnesses, again, name, affiliation, position.
Mr. Chairman, members, David Wolf here with the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. We're opposed to the bill.
Thank you.
I'm Johan Claes, representing the City of Livermore. They're principally opposed to this bill on the basis that a contract provided by a local entity with another provider should not be put out to a vote of the public.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members, Jim Gross on behalf of LSSI. And because the author did invoke the discussion, if I could have just 30 seconds to comment, because we seem to be the issue here.
30 seconds.
Thank you, sir. The bottom line here is that all of the issues raised by the librarians who spoke previously are all very legitimate issues. And those are the issues that are discussed in public forums, and we support that and work through that, and we were happy to even expand the public process. In fact, Mr. Williams told me that he felt his bill probably was over the line, but he was willing to talk about making it like a general plan process. We're completely in support of that, but this is a poison pill for consideration of the very issue, and for that we ask for your no vote.
Very good.
Mr. Chairman, members, Jason Gonzalez representing the cities of Camarillo, Cerritos, Lakewood, Palmdale, Placentia, Reading, and Torrance. In opposition, I just call this be careful what you wish for, because many of our cities are contract cities, and we don't want to have to take our public safety contracts to a vote of the people either. Thank you.
Good.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, John Moffitt on behalf of the County of Riverside, opposed to the bill.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, Tony Rice, representing the cities of Covina, Whittier, and the Independent Cities Association, opposed to the bill. Thank you.
Very good. Any other witnesses, tweeners? Very good. Mr. Wayso.
Thank you. And I've had a chance to speak with the author. I have some concerns with this bill. I understand what this bill's trying to accomplish, and I support that. I support keeping our libraries well staffed. I support keeping them staffed by highly educated and trained people. I support making sure that when decisions are made about services in local levels, that they're at the local level, that the public isn't misled about the level of services that are being provided in libraries, because outsourcing doesn't necessarily protect the service levels. If you bring in less qualified people, if you pay them less, that doesn't ensure that you're going to provide the same level of service. And I think the public is misled when oftentimes when I see grants outsourcing be used, it's usually in an environment where somebody at the political level is grandstanding on an issue that has become a political philosophical argument that the people largely misunderstand. So I'm not a big supporter of privatizing or outsourcing or bringing people even from out of the state to provide services at the local level when we're trying to protect quality jobs. Currently in California with our unemployment rates, it just does not make sense. I think there is a place for the state to come in and protect those jobs as much as we can. However, I don't agree with the method. Hopefully we can work together on implementing some guidelines for cities to follow when they do pursue outsourcing, to make sure that they comply with certain guidelines that get to making sure that they protect service levels, that apples are compared to apples and not to oranges when making this decision to outsource services. There's got to be transparency, like I mentioned. The public's got to be served in these processes. Necessarily eliminating outsourcing is not necessarily the way to go, however. I think local government has to retain some options in order to keep these services intact. Putting something on the ballot could also require a city to spend when they don't necessarily have to. This may work in the area of Ventura, but in San Diego, if we were required to put something on the ballot with the implementation of a contract, this would cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars simply to put that on the ballot, and that would hurt public safety and other items. So, I have developed a list that I'm willing to share with you on how we can accomplish what you're trying to accomplish and still give local government the ability to make that decision. Well, however, we need to protect quality jobs. We need to protect highly skilled staff. Having a librarian with a master's accessible to children is something that needs to be part of the mix. We have to be able to create a criteria, especially with library services, that says we need to have skilled staff, because the library itself is only as good as the people administering the library and providing that service. And just because you put books on the shelf doesn't mean people have access to them, or at least have a guide that will give them the best resources available to make sure they learn in the area of interest. And for that, we need highly qualified staff. And I'm saddened by oftentimes that people give up on trying to fund these services and mislead the public about what they're actually trying to accomplish. They're reducing services is what they're doing, and they're not willing to come out and say that publicly. And for that, I think your bill deserves a second chance, or at least an opportunity to morph into something that can accomplish that goal. So I want to move your bill with the condition that we'll work together on making sure that before it comes to the floor that it includes some of this language.
Thank you, Mr. Wesso, and I would be happy to work with you, the chair and vice chair. I've seen some language, we just haven't had time to really be able to analyze it fully in the 24 hours. But if there is a mechanism that's better than an election, that provides the kind of notice and the kind of accountability necessary, then I would be happy to look at that. But I feel like at this point we've got to move forward.
Mr. Leo.
Thank you very much, Assemblymember Williams. As a former library commissioner, as a former mayor, I've come to understand how, or the unique roles that libraries play in our community. It's one of the few institutions where people of all ages, all ethnicities, all economic backgrounds could come together and really have that access to knowledge, access to technology, especially in a downturn in the economy, a place where they could apply for jobs and access those resources. So I'm very sensitive to how important libraries are to the core functions of a local city and community. Also, I have major concerns about, as Mr. Wesso expressed, about outsourcing, a very important responsibility and the impact that would have on those employees and on those library services as well. As we had previously expressed or discussed, there were some concerns what's the best approach and whether there's some other effective approaches to dealing with this pressing issue that you've presented before us. And I know you got the input and ideas and of other ways to deal with it. The other one that I had mentioned was perhaps making sure the public has the most public notice and allowing or requiring that before a local government could make such an important decision that the public is put on notice with adequate time, perhaps 2 months of published notice, so that the public is not caught by surprise that it'll be on agenda Friday and a vote be taken the Tuesday a few days after for such an important decision. So there's different ways, different approaches of dealing with it. I have my concerns. But I did want to provide a courtesy vote so this bill can move forward, and you can work with the stakeholders and those of us who are interested in seeing if there's other ways to address this most pressing issue that you have in this bill. So with that, I'll second the bill. Second the motion.
Very good. Mr. Davis?
Well, it looks like that we have a situation where Mr. Williams has agreed to work with those who have come who do prefer the issue of having privatization in their libraries and support contracting out. Certainly our counties have been a level of government where a lot of contracting out traditionally has been done. Personally, though, however, when we do contracting out, it is important that we have contracting out because we don't have the level of service and skill available among our staff in our counties and in our local governments. When we talk about that we're going to hire again the person who has the master's degree, well, how in fact can they work better with the private agency? And just yesterday they were working with the government. Are they giving us less work? Do they have more skills with the master's degree yesterday than they do today? It would be my hope that that same employee that is working for the private industry is giving us the best that they can give. And I hope that when we look on both ends of this policy that we do so in a balanced way. And to preserve certainly public jobs is important. And while we want to put a shot in the arm of the economy and contract out, and we do when we can, but we also want to be able to stand up to say that we do have public employees who have their master's degrees in library science, can implement, execute, and plan great library programs. After all, this is the same librarian who just got hired by the private contractor. And somehow we're saying that she is more intelligent and much more sharper administratively in a couple of days and a couple of weeks. And so that begs a question for me. Finally, I will say that it should be incumbent upon us that we respect the decision of the public. Are you telling me that the public doesn't know what they are doing and they don't deserve an opportunity to vote if we're going to change and make some institutional change in governance of their own library, not our library, their library? They were responsible for us being where we are in governance, and they're intelligent enough to make a decision as to if they want to be able to decide the operation of their libraries. Libraries are not public agencies in terms of public safety. They are not public safety. But yet they are a significant institution that helps to improve the quality of life, particularly for the disadvantaged, for those of a poor economic background. And because of this core value in our communities that can help improve our lives, it deserves careful attention. It deserves the attention of the people who are going to be most impacted by the decision. And so it ought not be the decision of 5 people determining for us. You were intelligent enough to elect me as a policyholder, and I trust you to be intelligent enough to determine if you want your library to be public or private. And so for that reason, I will support the bill. And while we know that contracting out is something that our counties do, we create a great economy in our counties. At the same time, we want to respect those professionals in our community who have the same masters yesterday is the same masters working for the private industry tomorrow. So you can count on my vote.
Good. Any other comments, Mr. Gordon?
I happen to believe that a free public library is one of the most important institutions in our democracy. And so any change in the management or governance of those free public libraries should be done with extreme deliberation and consideration. I also believe very strongly in local control and the role that local elected officials play. So the element of your bill that has to do with the electoral process, I have concerns about. And yet I want to see a deliberate process. I'm pleased to hear that there are others on this committee who are willing to work with you, as am I, to see if we can find a way to create a mechanism that allows for the kind of deliberation that I could support. I'll support your bill today. I don't know whether I could support it in the future in its present form, but I look forward to working with you to find an appropriate way to address this important issue.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon. Any other comments from the committee? Let's go straight to this will go to appropriations next.
And Vice Chair has no recommendation on this bill.
Very good. And just comments to echo what's been said by the committee, and some provisions that need to be tightened up, like this, for example, the city of Ventura, which in Ventura County, which both Mr. Williams and I share in representation. I mean, they had a situation where the library was going to be closed down due to financial reasons. And as the league said, if we have to wait for an election, there has to be some way to find that that window there. If you have to wait 18 months before the city would or could get it approved, you have a situation where a library could be closed. Whereas if the city would have that flexibility to look into bringing someone else in as an operation. So I think something like that needs to be tightened up, and I think it's important to note that the public already has the ability to referendize decisions made by city councils if they disagree with them, and they can referendize those and have a vote and overturn a decision, and so a lot of that is in place as well. But those are just my comments. It's getting late, so we do have a motion and a second on the bill already. Please call the roll. Or, I'm sorry, Mr. Williams, you get a chance to close.
Respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Very good. Thank you. I believe it is to move to appropriations.
Yes. Smythe.
No.
Smythe, no. Alejo. Alejo, aye. Radford. Campos. Campos, aye. Davis. Davis, aye. Gordon. Gordon, aye. Hueso. Hueso, aye. Knight. Norby. Bill's out.
That measure is out. Bradford, aye.
Mr. Chairman, can we take the bills that are on call?
Actually, we have one more bill that you need to. Well, we have one more bill that we have to do. So if you would run the meeting very.
Good. Mr. Chairman, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Alejo, and committee
bill.
members. Thank you. AB 561 is a measure authored by our colleague, Mr. Gurel, that I'm happy to carry on his behalf. We do have witnesses here in support.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Casey Kaneko of Suter and Associates on behalf of the Ventura County Board of Supervisors. I have with me Norma Camacho, who is the Director of the Watershed Protection District.
Thank you. My name is Norma Camacho, and I am here today just to answer any questions you may have on this bill and respectfully request your support for the bill. Thank you.
Thank you for being here today. Any other witnesses in support of the bill? Seeing none, is there any witnesses in opposition? Any questions from any committee members? Seeing none, Mr. Smythe, you may close.
Thank you. Ask for an aye vote.
Roll call, please.
The motion is due pass. Smythe.
Aye.
Smythe, aye. Alejo.
Aye.
Alejo, aye. Bradford. Bradford, aye. Campos. Campos, aye. Davis. Davis, aye. Gordon. Gordon, aye. Hueso. Knight. Norby.
That's the way to do it.
It is, absolutely. Thank you, members. Before you leave, we do have a couple measures on call. So first item that is on call is item number 2, AB 54, from Mr. Solario. The current vote is 3-0. If you all are ready, the clerk will call the absent members.
Smythe. Bradford. Bradford, aye. Campos. Campos, aye. Davis. Davis, aye. Knight.
That measure is out. Next item we will take up is item number 3, AB 147 by Mr. Dickinson. Current vote is 1-2. Please call the absent members.
Alejo. Aye. Alejo, aye. Bradford. Bradford, aye. Campos. Campos, aye. Davis. Davis, aye. Gordon. Gordon, aye. Knight.
That measure is out. Next item is item number 7, AB 1008 by Mr. Cook. Current vote is 1-1.
Smythe. Alejo. No. Alejo, no. Bradford. Campos. Campos, no. Davis.
Mr. Cook's item number 7, AB 1008. Red light cameras.
Davis not voting. Gordon. No. Gordon, no. Knight.
All right, that measure fails. Reconsideration was requested and granted at the time of the presentation. Final item, item number 8, AB 1045 by Mr. Norby.
Current vote is 2-2. Bradford. Campos. Campos, no. Gordon. Knight.
Okay. That measure is still lacking votes. I will leave it open for another 2 minutes. If Mr. Norby returns, then he can decide if he wants reconsideration or not. So we'll leave the roll open for another 2 minutes. Members can please add on to measures that you haven't taken on.